Wanting something you can't have should sometimes just be a wish, because not every dream coming true is good for you. I learned this lesson the hard way, and even now my heart is full of regrets when I remember the things that happened a year ago. At 36, I was a female sales director at one of the biggest cosmetic companies in New York. My husband, Jim, 62, owned the company where I worked. He was impressed with my skills and charmed by my personality from the first day we met. Long story short, I got him to fall in love with me within a month, and he proposed for us to get married. Of course, I said yes. Who wouldn't want to marry the richest bachelor in town? Despite our 26-year age difference, Jim and I never had any issues in our relationship. He had a high tolerance for my complaints, keeping arguments to a minimum and making sure they never escalated into fights. He knew almost everything about me, what I wanted, what I hated, and even my little secrets. But what he didn't know was that boredom was slowly eating me up, and I was stalking my longtime crush, Leo, on social media. Leo, 36, was a high school crush I never outgrew. Until now. If anyone brought up his name, I would squeal like a teenager because 1, he had the most tantalizing eyes on the planet, and 2, he made me feel special with that one dance during our prom night when nobody else would have me as a date. That night totally changed my life. You know, you couldn't just forget the person who lifted your self-esteem on the most crucial night of your teenage life. So, imagine my heart breaking when I learned that he got married to a churchmate 6 years ago. I thought I was way prettier than that person. And I bet everyone was asking, why her? That must have been the reason I said yes to Jim right away when he proposed a year later. When he asked me to marry him, I believed I didn't have a chance anymore to be with Leo. Or so I thought. One day a former classmate messaged me about Leo and his wife getting divorced. I almost dropped my coffee mug because I was so disoriented with the good news. I could hardly get a grip on myself. But I knew if I wanted a chance with Leo, now was the time to make a move. So, after a month, I chatted with him and started some small talk. Soon, I offered to do anything for him as he was trying to move on with his life. Of course, I couldn't show him how thrilled I was to be reconnected with him, but I felt like I could give up everything at that point in my life just to be with him. And that included my marriage. Stupid, right? But let's be honest, any girl would do the same if they were me. After weeks of chatting and getting nowhere, I upped my game and invited Leo to a dinner date during one of Jim's business trips. He agreed. I wore the prettiest dress from my closet and put on the reddest lipstick on our date night. And the next thing I knew, we were in a hotel room together. We kept seeing each other for the next 3 months. I have to admit, being with him felt so good that everything was exactly how I had ever imagined. But then something was off. For one, he confided that his business was doing badly, and he needed $100,000 to cover the losses. A week later, he wanted to borrow my Bentley for a week to impress business investors and asked for another $100,000. This time, he said he needed it for his mother's intestinal operation. I kept giving in to Leo's requests, but deep down, I knew he was just after my money. Little did I know Jim was already on my trail. Yes, my husband knew everything from the start. He knew what I was doing on social media, day in and day out. He knew I was stalking Leo every day. He even knew which dress I wore on my first day with Leo. He was very much aware that Leo had been my crush since high school, but he never asked me about it. In all the business trips he had in the past, they were mostly setups to see if I would be hooking up with anyone while he was away. I passed the test in the first 4 years, but in the 5th year, he finally caught me sleeping around with the one I had been fantasizing about. Jim didn't confront me at all. When he got home, he ignored me and walked past as if I didn't exist. I knocked on his room until my knuckles hurt, but he didn't open the door. The messages I left on chat apps went unnoticed. I was desperate to talk and beg for forgiveness, but it was too late. The next day at my office, my staff gathered, watching a video of me kissing Leo. Worried more clips might follow, I grabbed the remote and turned off the monitor. On the same day, I received a termination letter without severance pay, citing unauthorized fund withdrawal. The bank manager called to say my accounts were closed, and when I got home that evening, my belongings were outside the gate. Seriously, I was thrown out of my own home after giving him a good time in bed for 5 years. Was I such a bad wife that he couldn't treat me with civility? Did he expect me to believe he never hooked up with other women while away? Now, a year later, I have no money, no family, and nowhere to go. I'm still trying to reconnect with Jim, but he keeps shutting the door each time I get near. If only I could turn back time, I'd never have gone near Leo because he wasn't worth giving up my life for.
I'm Dave, and I'm dating my girlfriend, Kelly. Our story started when I accidentally overheard Kelly having an honest phone conversation with her close friend. We've been together for about 2 years, and I was thinking about popping the question and asking her to marry me. Kelly is one of those women who often go unnoticed in a crowd. At first glance, you might not realize how beautiful and loving she is. She tends to hide her figure under large clothes because she doesn't like the attention her almost perfect figure attracts. But if you're lucky enough to get to know her better, you'll quickly understand the depth of her beauty and warmth. Our paths crossed at a New Year's Eve party thrown by a mutual friend. I had no idea that this chance meeting would lead to a love story. We found a lot of common interests, and even though she didn't charm me at first, I mustered the courage to ask her out after a week. We dated for a few months, and one evening she surprised me by coming over to my house. Wanting to make it special, I prepared a delicious dinner for her. While watching a movie on my couch, our sweet gestures turned into passionate kisses. The next moment, we were in my bed, and I was shocked at how uninhibited Kelly turned out to be. She showed fearlessness and adventure, pushing boundaries. I was overwhelmed, desperately trying to keep up all night. But our bond became stronger than ever after that night. Our relationship faced difficulties. I tend to forget or overlook things, unintentionally causing her pain. On the other hand, she, being a typical woman, sometimes did things that frustrated me. We didn't live together mainly because of her parents' influence. Despite our close relationship, she believed moving in would complicate things with her parents. Out of deep love, I respected her decision and never insisted. But one day, I overheard a conversation between her and her friend, making me feel fear and guilt. It was clear that I struggled to remember important dates like anniversaries or Valentine's Day, often taking days to realize my mistakes. After an closeness evening, Kelly left me. While I was in the bathroom, she apparently called Gina, shocking me as I thought our relationship was thriving. She talked about how I forgot Valentine's Day, making her doubt my feelings and thinking I'm just keeping her around. I felt a deep sense of responsibility. Kelly expressed disappointment, citing my poor memory as the reason. She wondered why an attractive guy who forgets details is needed and said if I forgot about Valentine's Day, she'd end our relationship. There was a moment of silence that seemed important to Gina. Reflecting on Gina's support, Kelly wished she had sought advice earlier. Doubting Gina's sincerity, Kelly and I had a strained relationship. Kelly believed Gina thought she deserved someone better than me. I couldn't recall a single positive thing Gina said about me in our 2-year acquaintance. I felt Gina was trying to convince Kelly to leave me, intensifying my anger. Instead of acknowledging my dating and relationship shortcomings, I blamed Gina. Kelly continued, emphasizing the issue goes beyond Valentine's Day. The gaps in my memory were becoming unpleasant for her, having to remind me of important dates. If I could remember at least one date and surprise her, she might not be so disappointed, doubting her importance to me. Sometimes she felt like she was just an object for satisfaction, easily forgotten. After a long conversation, she said goodbye to Gina, and I felt Gina had ulterior motives. My dislike for her intensified. Who did she think she was, trying to disrupt my relationship with Kelly? I got angrier, perhaps prompting subsequent events. Later that day, after leaving Kelly at her house, I sought advice from a friend, Mike, hoping he could help. Unfortunately, he didn't provide much assistance. It seemed like he looked forward to Kelly and me breaking up to make his move on her. As I thought, Sam came to mind. We hadn't talked in a while, but I believed he could offer answers to my current questions. Getting ready to propose to Kelly, I found myself desperately holding on to our relationship. I planned to bring it up after a shower on that important day, but accidentally overheard a conversation, forcing me to abandon my plans. Fortunately, Sam proved to be a true friend, offering invaluable advice and support. Mindful of my unreliable memory, I tried to jot down most details, and right after leaving his apartment, I started taking action to secure a future with Kelly. Recalling Kelly's favorite restaurant, I swiftly booked a table. It struck me that Gina had also talked about this place. Looking back, I wondered if Gina was boasting about her boyfriend inviting her to such a fancy place, implying that I couldn't do the same for Kelly. Anyway, I wasted no time in completing the booking and making the necessary prepayment for our spot. While buying a special gift for Kelly, I discovered a lovely brooch. However, in the jewelry store, I couldn't resist browsing through a collection of wedding rings and ended up choosing a stunning engagement ring with diamonds. Its high price led me to the bank to transfer money from savings to make the purchase on the spot. After that, I bought a new suit with the help of a friendly salesman. Recognizing my lack of fashion sense, I relied on the seller, who assisted me in making the right choice, creating a stylish image. Exiting the fitting room, I was surprised by the whispers of several women complimenting me. Despite their kind words, I couldn't shake a feeling of discomfort. To overcome it, I got another new suit and went to the barbershop for a new hairstyle. This decision was challenging for me, as I typically preferred a low-maintenance appearance. Sam strongly supported it, believing it was necessary. Later that evening, Kelly couldn't resist complimenting my hairstyle, clearly appreciating the transformation. Kelly complimented my new hairstyle and inquired about the reason behind the change. I explained casually that I thought she would like it and mentioned being tired of my old hairstyle. Kelly appeared intrigued by the sudden change, leading her to question the significance of being tired of the old look. The unexpected nature of Kelly's questions caught me off guard today. I couldn't help but wonder if she and Gina had spent too much time together, sensing a certain tension. Despite usually feeling confident around Kelly, I found myself nervous and chose to hold my tongue. It felt as if I were asking someone out for the first time, especially since I was inviting her to a special Valentine's Day dinner. I noticed my nerves heightening as I felt the weight of expectations and pressure during this conversation. Kelly then inquired about my well-being and questioned if I was inviting her to a romantic dinner. I confirmed and asked what was so unusual about us going out together, highlighting that it was the first time I had asked her out on this particular day. I expressed my love for her and clarified that I just wanted to show her. I had some plans, but I suppose I can cancel them. When I asked Kelly about her plans for Valentine's Day, she mentioned nothing special, just going to a party with Gina. However, since I invited her, she agreed to go with me. Curious about Gina and the party, I asked Kelly if there was something she wanted to tell me, expressing my concern about what might be going on between us. Kelly then addressed my recent concerns, asking what had been bothering me lately. She reminded me of her long history of dating Gina, and mentioned that, assuming I wasn't going to ask her out on Friday, she had made plans with Gina. She advised me not to take it too seriously, but I sensed a tinge of upset in her tone. I had to admit that I might have seemed jealous, which was the truth. I was also afraid of losing the person I love most in the world. That evening, Kelly decided to come home early, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was going to end our relationship. Despite her usual closeness, she seemed distant. Reflecting on the week, I realized we hadn't spent much time together, and on Friday morning, everything seemed to go wrong. I got a call from the restaurant at work, informing me that my order had been canceled. Some rich man had booked the entire restaurant, demanding the cancellation of all other orders. Despite my heated arguments, my efforts were in vain. The waiter remained adamant in canceling the order and returning the money. Panicking, I desperately searched for alternative booking options, but all seats were occupied. Feeling despair, I reluctantly accepted the idea of a cozy, romantic dinner at home. However, my hopes were dashed when an unexpected second phone call brought terrible news. There was a fire in my house. The apartment directly under mine turned to ashes, and my belongings, including cherished clothes and personal items, were soaked and destroyed beyond recognition. I had to look for a new place to live. As I leaned back in my chair at my desk, a wave of emptiness came over me. In a matter of minutes, my whole life was destroyed. It was impossible to salvage this day. A sudden realization struck me that the ring I planned to propose with was lying on the dresser in my now ruined apartment. I immediately left work and headed home, or rather, to what was left of it. The once cozy room had turned into a large, dark abyss. My things and clothes were not only ruined, but also turned into ashes. Looking at the spot where my chest of drawers once stood, a huge hole opened up, leading to the basement. Sitting on the curb and burying my head in my hands, I couldn't help but think about what other troubles awaited me. I didn't know yet that there was no limit to how much worse it could get. Suddenly, I noticed Kelly driving by in my so-called friend's Jeep. She quickly looked away, seeing my distressed state on the roadside. I had lost her, and it seemed my supposed friend took advantage. Later, I sifted through the trash, and to my surprise, found the ring still safely hidden in the box. Despite this small victory, I pondered its significance in my current situation. I stopped by my parents' house in the suburbs, freshened up, and put myself together. I still had some clothes there, a bit outdated but still suitable. Annoyed by my parents' constant chatter, I decided to head into the city and ended up at Sam's. Upon seeing me, Sam and his wife warmly welcomed me, expressing concern for my well-being. I shared the day's events with Sam, and we had dinner together. During the meal, the phone suddenly rang, and Sam handed it to me, noting that it was Gina and emphasizing its importance. Answering the call, I felt a flood of emotions. Anger, disappointment, and deep resentment overwhelmed me. I accused Kelly bitterly, expressing my belief that she called to gloat and questioning if she was happy now. The thought that my true love might be with someone else made me feel like my world was falling apart. I even insinuated that she might be behind the destruction of my house. In response, Gina seemed surprised and denied any gloating, expressing confusion about my change in behavior. She reassured me that Kelly still loved me, regardless of my thoughts, and conveyed sympathy for my recent misfortune. Gina explained that she had just learned about the fire at my house and had tried to call me during the day. I couldn't fathom how she only found out recently. I recounted seeing Kelly drive by in the same car when I was sitting on the side of the road, and how she tried to hide when she noticed me. Overcome with anger, I abruptly hung up the phone. Despite Sam and his wife's attempts to stop me, I thanked them and left, heading for heavy drinking. Sam understood the gravity of the situation I was in. I went to a familiar place, the VC I used to visit before Kelly entered my life. The irony of its initials now associated with it struck me as a reminder of an unforgettable event. Sitting at the bar, I started drinking heavily. Despite the bartender's reluctance, he continued to serve me more than he should have. By this time, I was heavily intoxicated and barely restrained. Kelly and Gina walked in, Kelly with red eyes from crying, and Gina looking furious. However, their presence no longer mattered to me. I sat indifferent to everything, savoring the last glass. The bartender avoided my place, sensing my disappointment. Kelly approached me, attempting to hug me, but I pushed her away, furious that she even tried. I questioned, asking if it was because Mike and she rode in his Jeep that day. Feeling offended, I replied, expressing my regret at catching her fooling around with him, trying to reason. Kelly insisted, telling me I was intoxicated and not thinking straight, suggesting we go to her place to discuss everything. Experiencing mixed emotions, I stubbornly declared that we would talk right there or not at all. Despite my intoxicated and enraged state, my love for her was so deep that I couldn't bring myself to utter such an offensive word as trash. Deep down, I was sure she had betrayed me. Gina approached me for the first time, expressing her disappointment. She mentioned that if I weren't in such a state of intoxication and despair, she might have reacted differently. Gina urged me to drop my ego, stating that Kelly adored me and I was pushing her away. She advised me to rest and talk calmly in the morning. I then spoke about Gina being a wonderful presence in my life for the last 2 years. I acknowledged that in her eyes, I had always been surrounded by some kind of negativity, and she had been wanting me to end up with Kelly ever since day one. I finished the contents of my glass and took the last one left on the bar. As I drank it, a wave of dizziness and numbness came over me. From the excessive amount of drink I drank, my consciousness became confused. Eventually, I lost consciousness. The bartender and the girls helped carry me to Kelly's car. When I woke up the next morning, I was greeted by a throbbing headache. Slowly, I got out of bed and headed to the bathroom. After a while, I was able to get up and move around. To my surprise, my clothes were washed and neatly folded on a chair in the corner of the room. When I got dressed, I realized that my pockets were empty. When I went into the kitchen to have a drink, I saw that Gina and Kelly were sitting there and seemed to be waiting for me. Gina, being her usual clever self, remarked that I wasn't in a good mood. Surprised by her unexpected response, I had anticipated her celebrating a triumph over me. Kelly remained silent, her eyes fixed on the table. Irritated, I faced them, expressing my hope that they were happy now and mentioning that Kelly hadn't slept the previous night. In response to Gina's question about whether I was okay with it, I firmly conveyed that I was far from okay. I explained the trouble they caused the night before, describing the awful sight of my apartment on fire and expressing my frustration about finding refuge in a sketchy bar. Gina revealed that Kelly had contacted my parents, located Sam, and found out where I might be. They had checked several places, and at the last one, my state was shocking. Frustrated, I questioned the motive behind bringing me there, accusing Kelly of possibly gloating and walking all over me. I assumed my parents had asked her to look after me. Looking at Kelly for the first time, I noticed her shoulders shaking, and she was in tears. Feeling desperate, I sank into a chair and stared at the person who owned my heart. Gina, with a stern expression, brought out things hidden in her pockets, a dinner order receipt, a recent clothes purchase certificate, and a charred box containing a ring. Annoyed, she mentioned finding them before washing my clothes and urged me to explain the meaning of these objects to Kelly. Embarrassed, I looked at the receipts in the box, turning red. Kelly had stopped crying and was now looking at me. Before embarrassing myself further, I sought answers from Kelly, questioning why she went with Mike and why she tried to hide her face. She dismissively replied that I couldn't understand. Summoning my resolve, I challenged her to try me and insisted on knowing what was going on. Kelly explained that Mike came to pick her up after hearing about the fire, taking her to check if anything was salvageable. When she saw me in a serious condition on the side of the road, she instinctively decided to invite me to her place. She clarified that it was a misguided action, and she just wanted to help. Kelly urged me to stop being unreasonable, emphasizing that she cared about me more than I deserved. Gina admonished me, pointing out that Kelly was not doing well either. It dawned on me that I had completely misinterpreted the events of the last 24 hours. I realized that Gina had never tried to ruin my relationship with Kelly, and I acknowledged her support for both of us. I recognized the unfairness and insult in my baseless accusations. Gina encouraged us to focus on the love and connection that united us all instead of negativity and suspicion. It is important to trust each other and communicate openly. I understand that you may feel protective of Kelly, but please understand that my intentions have always been sincere and respectful. I genuinely care about Kelly, and I want her to be happy. I hope that you will be able to see this and put aside any doubts or hostility that you may have towards me. I tried to reconcile the two of you. Kelly was thinking about ending her relationship with you and continuing her relationship with Mike. He constantly remembers important dates and details that you often forget. Just let me explain. Kelly truly loves you, but lately it seems to her that you don't reciprocate her. She got the impression that you are on the verge of breaking up with her. I did not agree with her point of view and expressed my thoughts. If you weren't so inattentive to important dates and other issues, both of you would probably be much happier now. It's incredibly difficult for me to protect you, especially when you're acting stupid. Like yesterday, I couldn't help but feel like a complete idiot at that moment, a feeling that still haunted me. It suddenly dawned on me that Gina had been on my side all this time. Reflecting on my failures of the previous day, I let the negativity cloud my judgment, assuming the worst in any situation. As I sat there, I was overcome by a deep sense of stupidity. Holding the receipt in my hands, I confirmed that our dinner reservation at Del Rio's restaurant had been canceled because a rich man had booked the whole place. I had hoped to invite Kelly to dinner there last night, wanting to make the evening unforgettable for her. Despite Gina's dismissal of Del Rio's, I explained that it was the best place in the city. I mentioned that I remembered it was Valentine's Day and had even booked a table, but it was canceled. However, I emphasized to Kelly that this was the main thing for me. I shared with them the effort I went through to buy my new suit, noting Gina's shocked expression at the idea of me shopping for clothes. I acknowledged that I had always been a simple man in blue jeans and a t-shirt. Both Gina and Kelly were stunned, and I couldn't help but enjoy their reactions, though I wished it had happened under more favorable circumstances. When I held the ring, memories flooded back, inspiring me to kneel in front of Kelly, taking her hands. Admitting my recent unease, I confessed that I might not be the most impressive ladies' man and struggle with important dates, but one thing was certain. I deeply loved Kelly. Placing the box in her hands and intertwining our fingers, I gathered courage and popped the question, asking her to marry me. Gina was stunned by the unexpected question, and tears streamed down Kelly's face. The room filled with silence as I looked at Gina briefly, and then returned to Kelly, unsure of what to say. With a gentle gesture, Kelly leaned over to me and carefully opened the box in front of her, revealing a ring of brilliant radiance, not inferior to her beauty. Trembling hands carefully removed the ring from the soft case, and with extreme precision, put it on the fourth finger of the left hand. The ring fit flawlessly, as if it was meant to be. I was stunned by the statement of the jeweler, as he assured me that in order for the ring to fit her, it would need to be resized. But my surprise quickly turned into joy when Kelly wrapped her arms around me and pulled me to her. She expressed her acceptance, saying that she would marry me, and her hot tears touched my cheek. Embracing her tightly, I observed Gina, who was also crying. We hugged Kelly and shared passionate kisses. Kelly's eyes were open and filled with a searching look that I couldn't quite understand. Suddenly, Gina pulled Kelly away from her and embraced her tightly, pouring out her heart in her arms. Both were crying and gazing at the ring, tears streaming down their faces. I briefly sat up from my seat, but immediately sat back down, watching them whirl around the room, their voices filled with delight and surprise. Remaining in my place, I suddenly heard the phone ring. The answering machine went off, and a familiar voice filled the room. Mike was on the line, expressing his concerns about me not being right for Kelly, especially after what happened yesterday. He suggested inviting her to dinner to talk. Before Kelly or I could react, Gina quickly picked up the phone and interjected, informing Mike that Kelly wasn't interested in him or any other guy. She asserted that Kelly had found someone special, telling him to leave. Angered, Gina abruptly ended the conversation and burst out laughing. Kelly joined in, and eventually, I found myself laughing too. Gina's unexpected anger towards Mike surprised me, but it became clear that she had some sympathy for me, or at least tolerated my presence. Later in the evening, as we lay together in Kelly's bed, she rested her head on my chest. The soft light illuminated the engagement ring she was looking at, creating a gentle atmosphere. Even in the dim lighting, the ring continued to shine. Straining my eyes, I noticed a single tear glistening in her eye. Concerned, I cautiously asked Kelly what was bothering her. After a moment of hesitation, she quietly replied that nothing was bothering her at all. In fact, everything seemed incredibly right and perfect. With irresistible tenderness, she uttered the three important words, "I love you, Dave." Soon, we were eagerly preparing for a modest wedding. Kelly was happy. A smile never left her face. Gina helped my future wife in everything. She was always with us. I realized how much I was wrong about Gina. She turned out to be a very good person. Sometimes I felt very ashamed that I thought she wanted us to break up with Kelly. As for Mike, he tried to contact my dear Kelly more than once, but fortunately for me, she avoided any conversations and meetings with him. I was more confident than ever in her love and loyalty. Shortly before the wedding, Kelly pleased me with very exciting news for me. In the evening, she stayed late after work, which greatly worried me, but not for long. Returning an hour later, Kelly said that I would become a father, and she would become a mother. From happiness and confusion, I was speechless. I just couldn't figure out for a few seconds if these were real words or a prank. I understood alone. I was happier than her. My dear Kelly and I had a bright and happy future. Just as I dreamed, my life has turned into a continuous happiness. Gina also pleased us with wonderful news. Her boyfriend finally decided and made her an offer to become his wife.